if you work through this book and you can do everything in the book, then you're going to be a very good altissimo player.
That's Ben Wendell, who by any measure is one of the top sax players in the world today. He's been voted the saxophonist with the best haircut 9 years in a row, and he has developed a particular mastery of the altissimo range. He's got a new book out called Path to Altissimo, and in this video, Ben's gonna share with us some of his secrets for how he learned how to shred up there like a monster. If you've ever wanted to improve your high notes, you're gonna wanna watch this. You know, everyone wants to know how to play altissimo. This is this thing everyone wants to know on the saxophone. There's no quick answer. There is this path. You have to go down this path to get there.
I'm a sax nerd. You know, I'm a sax nerd for life, and I remember being 15 years old. I had a Selmer Series 2 saxophone, and it had a high F sharp on it. And I just thought this was the most amazing thing, that I could go higher than high F. And I had this special key. Altissimo to me was this magical art, which was, it's like these notes that are not built on the saxophone that somehow you can just magically create. So even back then I was really fascinated by this technique, and I remember specifically finally figuring out how to play a high G. The effort it took to just get to that point, you know, and I just never stopped working on this technique, and I've learned so much over the years. You know, a couple decades in, I felt like it was time to kind of share some of the things that I've learned. In a way, I wanted to write a book that was for two types of people. The first person would be the 15-year-old me. So, you know, like a resource that a 15-year-old could open up and actually understand. But then I also wanted something that would be for like an advanced player, and I thought it would be really fun to write material that would be, you know, something for a player that's kind of maybe has a grasp of it and really wants to push themselves further. It's been a journey. It's definitely, Path to Altissimo felt like the right title, you know, because it's a really specific direction, and the way I built the book, it's really like, here's where you start and here's where you finish. You know, it kind of increases in difficulty, and it's meant to really be this thing that if you work through this book and you can do everything in the book, then you're going to be a very good altissimo player.
For someone who's already practicing overtones, you get in this book and you're right away, you got some maybe familiar things, but there's also some new, likely some new exercises, things you haven't really explored. And so for me right away, it was great, because I'm someone who likes to play overtones and I work on them every day. And I was like, oh, great, this is several new ways to kind of to work on it. It's great to get your perspective on all this stuff, because you would be arguably maybe the best altissimo saxophonist out there, or one of the top altissimo saxophone
I'll take it.
People out there.
I'll take it, Jay.
Who better to write this book, really? And if anybody's watching is unfamiliar with Ben and his playing, he's got several albums out, and it's not all altissimo notes. You play some of the other notes too. But I encourage anyone who's watching to go listen to Ben's playing his recordings, and you'll hear everything that he's teaching in this book turned into actual music. So it's not just exercises for the practice room. It does have a point somewhere. Altissimo on the saxophone has come a long way with a lot of players and various recordings. And now is a good time for this book that you've written, because it's bringing that altissimo study into the 21st century.
I put the book together in the way that I would want to learn, which is, I just really appreciate things that are just clear. People at many different levels would understand. And I'm including 30 minutes of video footage of me demonstrating these things, just like what you're talking about, which I think is really helpful. It's like, it's one thing to kind of read about a concept and think about it, and then it's really helps to also see someone just demonstrate these ideas.
I really like how you're working through this one overtone at a time. So like the first overtone exercise, and you're playing it much higher than I would normally play. And then the lip stir is going down. which is also kind of different than what most people are used to. Now a quick word from the sponsor of today's video. Well, there's not really a sponsor apart from you, the viewer. If you enjoy this sort of content with some of the world's best saxophone players, one thing you could do to support the considerable amount of work that goes into making these videos is simply click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. I love reading your comments and replying to as many of them as I can. Also, check out the description below where I've put links to Ben's new book, Path to Altissimo, as well as lots of other things that saxophone nerds will enjoy clicking on. Now let's get back to shredding high notes.
In the book, I think I literally call overtones, the key to altissimo. I can't emphasize this enough. This thing that we call voicing, which is how we manipulate our throat and the position of our tongue. This is called voicing. This is what overtones really make us good at. The ability, your skill at doing voicing is everything. If I'm going to put down an exercise for the first overtone, I really wanted to write down the full range of what's possible so that people can really experience what it means to do, what you'd call advanced voicing, let's say, when you're just really high on the first overtone, because it's a different feeling. The higher you go, the more challenging it is. The window of accuracy that's demanded, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's the same with altissimo. The higher we go with the notes, the more we want to place the notes in the pitch. The room that you have to place it just right, it gets real small. And so all of the overtone exercises that I put in the book, I'm really just trying to create opportunities to really explore voicing from like every possible angle, so that when you get to the altissimo, you're really armed with a kind of a level of accuracy and control that will just make that experience easier.
This is the part that is abstract for a lot of people when they're first, people are like, oh, but what's the fingering? Just give me the fingering, but
Yeah.
It's not that. It doesn't matter the fingering.
Yeah.
It's all done here and in your ear.
I really believe that your voicing muscles are like 80% of any altissimo note. That the fingerings are really not super important. They're important. I mean, they're relevant, but they're not as relevant as you think. And so to demonstrate that, I play an altissimo high A, and I literally just start scrambling my fingers. And I just hold the A. When Mr. Sax created the saxophone, he was not thinking about altissimo fingerings, and that's kind of the mystery of that art, which I love, which is that there are no correct fingerings. It's all fair game. That was kind of a big lesson that I learned in the beginning years, even through college. I just had 10 people show me 10 different fingerings for high B, and actually, in fact, they all kind of work as long as my voicing is really strong. And now it's just really more like which one feels the most comfortable and which one kind of creates the best path for me and the best scale.
The similarity with the Rasher book is that you're like, okay, the fingerings, they don't matter. I'm putting them in there, but don't even look at that part. Like I think in the Rasher book, he says, like, don't skip to the fingerings, you'll never get it.
Yeah, well, and it's really interesting to talk to other advanced players that are really strong, that are great at altissimo, people that have inspired me, of which there are so many. People like Joshua Redman, Mark Turner, Seamus Blake. Being the sax nerd that I am, I've literally, asked them what fingerings they use for all these high notes, and it's so interesting to just see these different paths and see what they've figured out. And I love that there's many, many different ways you can go. The vast majority of what's going to get you your high notes is how good you are at voicing and overtones. Knowing that, I basically created a fingering set that has very, very minimal movement. And is not something that feels really complicated, because most of the control is going to be right here. If your voicing muscles are strong, if you're advanced at that, you can basically push through almost any fingering on almost any horn, any model.
Even if you've been playing altissimo and overtones for a long time, if you're convinced that a certain fingering is the one that works, it's almost like you're psyching yourself out. And
Totally.
if you accept this thing like, you know what, multiple fingerings can work just as well, it allows you to rely on the voicing more.
One thing you might run into a little bit with fingerings is maybe for whatever reason on your horn, an altissimo note will generally come in flat. Generally speaking, voicing up the pitch is a little harder to do. So what I like to do is, like, if there's quote unquote a problematic note, is I'll just try and see if I can find a way to play that note where it's kind of running a little sharp. It's kind of running a little high, and I'm able to just relax and pull the pitch down. That's why I always warm up with overtones, long tones and overtones, because it kind of gets me in the space, and then altissimo just feels a lot easier. If I were to just pick up the horn and then just shred high notes for 20 minutes straight without any warm up, like I could definitely hurt myself. I don't recommend that anyone practices overtones for more than 30 minutes a day.
The beauty of this is not just for the altissimo notes, it's for all the notes. It's the same process of playing a beautiful note in tune anywhere on the saxophone. It's the same thing. You need to trust your ear and your voicing. And
absolutely, it's all interconnected. I mean, for me, overtones have led to not just control of altissimo, but tonal production, embouchure strength. Like, I mean, I really remember the better I got at overtones, really getting advanced at that, I just suddenly noticed, wow, I can practice 4 hours, 5 hours. I noticed my chops weren't getting as tired as quickly. It really helps you be efficient with your use of air and your embouchure. You discover, oh yeah, I don't actually need this much strength to produce this volume or to play high notes. I think a lot of people get into this thing where they think, when I play low notes, my embouchure is looser, and when I play high notes, it's really tight, but you discover over time as you get really good at these overtones that that's not the case at all. And in fact, there can be, in a good way, there can be very little difference between the embouchure strength you use in the low range of your horn and the high range of your horn. You start to get this more uniform way of playing the range of your horn.
I don't know if the order of these exercises was done on purpose, but I find, by the time I get to the major scales, I'm nicely warmed up. Because it's that major scale, that sound we're so familiar with, that really supports the, using your ear, trusting the voicing, and then, okay, I'm going to put those fingers down and that note's going to come out. So those are really great where they are in the book, I find.
I definitely tried my best to create a really logical progression in terms of this book. Like it really goes from left to right. You start with overtones, then you start to discover, you start to work out the fingerings, and then you get to the exercises, and even that, with the scale choices and the types of exercises. I have basic exercises and then more complex exercises. It's really a progression.
When you first told me about this book, and I said to you, I hope you're going to do a print version. Because for me, I just envisioned, because like that Rasher book, that's one I bought, 25 years ago. I don't know when, however long ago I bought that book. And I still have it. And every now and then I might look in there for something, and it's a nice reference to have. And while digital references are great, some things, it's nice to have this physical copy. So.
Well, Jay, literally because of you, I'm doing a print version.
Okay.
After you
cool.
checked out the book and you said, this would be so great to just be able to have this on a music stand. I think that specific range of the horn, whatever you want to call it, the break, like the place where you go from built-in notes on the saxophone, high F, maybe high F sharp, depending on your model, and then suddenly you're in altissimo. That's the hardest part. Because I found that for most people, like once you can get a high G sharp, kind of in that range, if you can really get that and just nail it and pop it out of thin air, the notes above that are not that much harder, you know, so that's
sometimes easier.
Yeah, sometimes they're easier, totally. I tend to use the front E, the front F as my way, as an entry point into altissimo.
You know, I haven't used my high F sharp key. All my saxophones have it, but I haven't used it. I can't remember the last time I used that key.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I feel the same way. It's a weird thing. I mean, I was so excited when I had my first saxophone that it had a high F sharp. I just thought it was so cool. But yeah, in fact, the deeper you get into altissimo, eventually, like having that high F sharp or G key like built into the horn, you end up kind of not using it.
I don't do a lot of just practice up in that range. So this is one of the things I really liked about your book is you put in a lot of exercises. You know, once you get to that point where you can do your overtones, you've got your set of fingerings that work for you. Okay, the next step is, okay, now you have to make this part of your range. It has to become something that you can play. And I liked what you wrote. Don't save that work for a particular time or project. Just start incorporating it in everything you practice.
I keep saying I'm a sax nerd, but it's you know, in terms of altissimo, I just love that range of the horn. I love how it sounds. Having that extra octave, very early on, I just decided, even though it is this special technique and even though it's not technically, was not intended on the horn, I decided this is part of the horn. If you imagine it that way, then it's going to be a natural thing that you'll just start including it in everything you do. So when people ask me, you know, like, yeah, how did you get good at altissimo? How did you advance? That's usually my answer. You know, it's every day if I'm shedding scales or patterns or language or kind of anything, I just include that octave. and over time, and that's the thing, it takes a long time. Over time, then it just becomes natural, you know, and I don't think about it too much, but of course it's not, I'm not talking months, as you well know. It kind of demands that repetition because when you're playing up there for real and you're improvising, you just don't have time to think about those fingerings. They're so strange.
You're an accomplished classical musician as well as jazz. And something that occurred to me in this book is that this is a book that can appeal to both groups of saxophonists.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I started off as a classical bassoonist and saxophonist. I feel like those two worlds more and more have come closer and closer together.
It's just such a straightforward study of just the fundamental thing. It's universal regardless of the style of music you're going to play.
Totally.
Somebody who's already knows altissimo and overtones is going to get a lot of information out of it that they're going to be able to use right away.
Totally.
Someone who's starting from the beginning is going to get a lot of information that they're going to have years of work, but a really good plan of attack for this.
Yeah.
That's why it's the sort of book that everyone should get. And I really mean that.
Thanks, Jay.
Is the book. When you first sent it to me, I remember I texted you right away. I said, you've written the new altissimo book for the 21st century and for
Thank you,
generations.
man. I really appreciate that. The goal with getting better at this technique is, of course, always music, you know, and not just be able to scare off, you know, dogs or something, you know. So, but I thought it was important to include just actual pieces of music at the end so you can actually apply this idea and see what that feels like. What I love about working on this technique is everything is fair game, you know. So I put some Bach in there. I talk about how Transcriptions are a great option too. I'll often do transcriptions of famous players that didn't play altissimo, because they're perfect candidates to take up an octave. Like a lot of Charlie Parker solos, like he doesn't really go above high F very often. So he's like, it's perfect. It just fits really nicely. And then I decided to just write some really hard ones of my own, just for the sake of doing it.
I'm going to be working out of this book for a long time, and I'm going to get one of these Bach pieces down. I'm going to do it.
I can't wait to hear it, man.
Well, you might have to wait a long time, but thanks, Ben, for writing this great book and helping me and so many people, I'm sure, are going to get so much out of studying Path to Altissimo. And thanks for being our guest here.
Thank you so much, Jay. Man, such a pleasure to hang, and thanks for spreading the word and checking out the book. I really appreciate it.